Conversations from the Zoom Room.
Hi. Oh yeah, that's some accomplishment. Bill here from the Olympic Training Center, Park City, Utah. Speaking of accomplishment, we have an epic episode for you today, Women in Vision. Hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoy being part of it. Thank you as well to Bidisha Rudra, my co-host on this one. Take it away.
All right, so let's start with a round of introductions. I am Bidisha Rudra. I have been with Essilor for over 14 years. Currently, I am the Senior Managing Director for Transitions that we sell through the Essilor channels. Enjoy what I do, selling transitions, selling Gen 8, and looking forward for a good rebound of the business for the second half of the year.
I'm Bill Gerber. I'm the founder and CEO of OMG and Contentlinq. We focus on creating interesting practices and now a lot of software, patient experience software. So I love this industry. I love what I do, and I love the direction we're headed as an industry. So I'm pretty enthused about this whole rocket ship of an industry that we're all riding on right now.
I'm Jennifer Lyerly. I'm an optometrist practicing in Raleigh, North Carolina. I practice at a small private practice called True Vision Eye Care, and I am buying into that practice later on this year. We're kind of starting the process right now. And I'm the co-founder of Defocus Media with Daryl Glover.
I'm Dr. Kate Hamm. I practice in Wichita, Kansas, at a private practice that has 3 locations. I've been involved with a lot of directions in optometry, but some that are most recognizable is my podcast is Defocus Media, called On State with Rachel and Kate, and then my work within the wage gap within the optometric compensation research study group.
My name's Katalina Yandell. I practice up in the Bay Area, just south of San Francisco and San Mateo, California. I work in a practice actually with my boyfriend who purchased the practice, and he's who had that goal forever. But our whole goal is to create a very concierge, beautiful optometric experience. So we want to really kind of go back to kind of the root of where we came from with optometry, create this kind of jewelry store kind of experience, and also kind of marry that with medical at the same time. So we've been working really, really hard on that. COVID threw some wrenches, but we're working on it, and we're really excited about going forward with that.
Hey guys, I'm Dr. Danielle Richardson. I am a practicing optometrist in Los Angeles, California, in the Fairfax district. If you are familiar with LA, I work at a boutique private practice where our goal is to focus on wellness and the comprehensive health of the eyes. So in the conversation about wellness, a lot of times eyes are forgotten. People are drinking green juice, they're working out, but they're not thinking about eyes. So our focus is really to add eye care and ocular health in the wellness conversation. So it's a natural fit for me in terms of practicing, because I also run a holistic wellness company where I offer yoga classes and wellness retreats. Well, not now because of COVID, I had to cancel all the retreats. But wellness is a big part of my life and a big part of what I do. It's been really cool to marry my passions with my profession.
We want to find out about your experiences, okay? What are some of the personal experiences or compelling arguments that you'd say have influenced your personal views on racial and gender discrimination in the society? And we're jumping right into it, so go for it.
I can start. So with all of everything that has kind of popped up lately that we've seen after the murder of George Floyd has not been one that I feel like has, it's not a new feeling for a lot of us. I have been really passionate in the world of equality for all races, genders, socioeconomic backgrounds, religions, pretty much sexual orientations. I really believe that there has been a bubbling that we have, that finally had enough people get fed up that it turned into a boil. So a lot of things that I've seen in my life, I have I have not witnessed firsthand, but have felt because of the people that I'm closest to have felt those feelings. And for me, I don't want any of them to ever feel that way. And feeling a 10th or even a 12th or a 100th of what they might have felt because of who they are just as a person, how they're how they just look or how they feel or how they believe. It has just compelled me on so many levels to really be a person that amplifies their voices and be a person that advocates for them in the community. While I can't be them and be able to speak their voice, I really try to take the time to amplify those voices and be able to create within the community opportunity for equality there. My experience has been one of great passion and of great heartache, but also great wonder and hope and excitement. It's hard to kind of mix all those feelings together into one. I'm somebody that lives heart open, feelers up, and just kind of is constantly feeling the world. So that has been something where I have taken all of those things, all of those feelings in my heart with my feelers and brought it back to our community. Whether it's with an optometry, whether it's in where I live, whether it's where I went to school, all of those things.
Well, I'd like to share a little bit of a story that happened recently in my office. So my technician, who optometrists, we know, like that is your right-hand partner to get you through the day. So my technician, Crystal, she's African-American. And just last week, we were seeing an elderly patient. She had come in for her exam. My office is very close to the pre-testing room, so I can usually hear the conversations that are going on in there. And this elderly patient was asking Crystal a lot of questions, of course, about COVID. And then somehow it turned into questions about how dangerous it is out there. And why is it that Black people are killing each other and ruining our city during the protests? And I jumped up out of my desk seat. I was so offended and upset and ran over because I expected Crystal to be really upset. And what was she supposed to do with working at this patient? She's just trying to perform her job and she shouldn't be fielding these type of questions, right? And I come over to the door and wave to see if can I switch with you? Can I take over? And she's waves me off. And then at the end, when this patient's ready to be seen, she's so nice to this woman, works her up and everything. I was like, Crystal, I am so sorry. I wanted you to if you feel uncomfortable with things that people are saying to you, please trade with me. I have you, we're not going to let people make you feel uncomfortable. And she was like, oh, this stuff I'm so used to. It's not anything that I've taken the hard way. I know she doesn't mean anything by it and she's just asking questions, but I'm used to this. And that hurt me even more, that this is not a one-off. Yeah. She has been fielding these sort of questions and these kind of discrimination for years and years, probably at her place of work. This is not a single patient experience. And it's these kind of situations where you realize that your colleagues, your coworkers, your friends are dealing with a whole aspect of their day-to-day life that you're going around unaware of. And to them, that's normal. And it was crushing.
Yeah, I think obviously as the only Black person on this panel, I have a different experience, just because I experience both racial and gender discrimination, together. But personally, I think one of the main differences between how Black people or even other minority groups are raised is that your parents kind of teach you how to deal with the world, and they kind of instill some certain things and values, and they teach you what to expect. And so to me, in my experience, my parents did a really great job of instilling in me the idea of, number one, what ignorance is, right? And truly to your staff members idea, the concept of it's unfortunate, but you really do just have to kind of shrug it off. People genuinely live in the dark, and it's not a worthwhile endeavor to try and entertain them. But also that all you can focus on is being exceptional and creating an environment that supports that for you. And I mean, you know, the concept of like, you have to work twice as hard to get half as far is really true. And that's something that, you know, we know. But for me, I've never leaned away from being a Black woman. Like, I've always embraced it, and I see it as a strength. It's like, I'm the only Black person here. You know, that makes me memorable. It's not anything that I should pretend that's not happening, or, you know, pretend it doesn't exist. I'm from Indianapolis, Indiana, and I actually grew up in a pretty diverse experience for most of my life. But, you know, I went to predominantly white schools, and then I went to Indiana University for both optometry school and undergrad in Indiana, in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a small rural town. You know, when you leave the college bubble, I mean, it is quite an awakening about what is really going on in the world, and how, you know, race and gender and all these things sort of intersect with maybe people who don't have as much exposure to people of more diverse backgrounds. So, I mean, I think it's the moment now is great that a lot of these conversations are being had, but how I feel personally is like, this is really an opportunity and in a moment of education and intra-community work. And it's not like a time for Black people to say, like, you know, it's not my job to educate everyone about what it is to be Black or what it is to be an ally, or like that's not, to me, that's not the responsibility I see in this moment. Unfortunately, racial and gender discrimination is just the name of the game. It's a part of this world that we live in. It's how this country was founded. I mean, you think about it, the land, like, people were inhabiting this land before the Mayflower got here, you know, and then another population of people were enslaved. So it is a mix, and that sort of that energy of dehumanization is just a part of American culture. And so I do think this is really a great opportunity for us as a country and for us as a people to kind of look at things a little bit more objectively, to take a step back and zoom out and see maybe where are our blind spots and what can we do to help kind of dissipate some of that racial and gender discrimination that is so prevalent in society.
That brings us to the next question. Why do you think that in today's modern time, we still have, you know, both racial and or gender discrimination in a very meritocratic society, you know, where we think we have to recognize people based on their talent, on the skill sets, but why do we still suffer from discrimination?
I think one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot in this is that I was one of the people who really, excuse my cat. So I have to say I was one of the people who I really had blindness to everything racial surrounding me. I did grow up in a very diverse place. I'm from Seattle. I would be maybe 25% of the population of my school, lots of Asian children, lots of Black children, lots of Indian children. It was very diverse. So I was really lucky that I got so much exposure. And then I kind of, like the West Coast, I feel is pretty good at kind of just melting pot together, you know? So I got a lot of exposure to that. And then I just never really thought about what happens anywhere else or what happens outside the situations that I'm a part of. So when all of this started happening, so I live in downtown San Jose, and they had like the first riots ever. I live right across from City Hall, and there were literally burning vehicles. There were dumpsters on fire surrounding my apartment. I was terrified to come home, right? And then because of all the protests, they ended up closing our mall down as well. So literally my home, my workplace, nowhere felt safe. And I thought, well, that's terrible. Why would anyone want me to make me feel like that? And then the other thought I had was, well, it's because that's how they feel. It's how other people feel all day, every day. Maybe not all the time, but it's a feeling that I've never had to experience because I've lived a very sheltered and put together life, you know? So I've been reflecting on that a lot, is that it never was brought to my attention as something I needed to pay attention to.
Bidisha, I think your point about America, I mean, we assume, right? We all grew up being told that America is a meritocracy. And that's, I think when we fundamentally look at the issue though, these inequalities, gender and race, are built in to the system from the very, very beginning. And people do not enter elementary school on an equal footing. If you're coming from a background of poverty, if you have not a two-parent household, if you have a mom that's working multiple jobs and is not able to be there to help you with your homework, you're not going to be able to necessarily have the same chance for success as someone else. So you could work as hard as you ever wanted to work. Do you truly have a fair and equal chance of getting to that next level? And I really think a meritocracy is an ideal, but is not actually a truth of what America is at the moment.
My personal background. So I grew up in India, and I came to this country as a, because it's a land of opportunity, and I have seen a lot of discrimination, gender inequality in India. And for the most part, I've seen that America has provided me with a lot more opportunities to grow, to establish, to learn the skills that I needed to be successful, to be ambitious, despite my skin color, despite my background, my accent. I have been a successful woman in this industry, but I still kind of feel that there is a hidden layer of discrimination in this society, and collectively we have to be conscious about it. Efforts to to eradicate it, to understand it, deal with the unconscious bias and get out of it. So yeah, it's a joint effort by all.
And I think you made a great point there, that it's an unconscious bias that we have to get out of. That's the first step, is realizing the things that we've had that have sometimes, I think why so much of our societal norms exist is because rather than us saying, I don't know where that belief came from, we instead believe that that's something that we just are, that we deserve, that we are able to hold on to as our own, rather than saying, okay, where did this belief come from? Why am I believing that and challenging that? So the way for us to become those unconscious biases, or those implicit biases, to be able to be transformed, is we first have to recognize that we ourselves are, have to be held accountable for that. We have all these opportunities, and I believe that there is hope in things that we have, that many, in America, I believe that there's hope there, but I believe that there's also a lot of unaccountability that we don't have. And that might be why a lot of things are staying the way they are, because rather than us saying, well, what can I do to challenge myself to make it better? How can I challenge my implicit bias? We have to find somebody to blame it on. So we have to make the unconscious a conscious effort to be able to really create that change in our world.
Great point. I think it's a time where hopefully millions and millions of people are getting in touch with their own biases, and having the self-awareness to go deep and say, what do I believe? Right. This is huge, and I'm saddened, and I'm also optimistic. I'm saddened by how much hate there is, and where people feel very comfortable in social media just hating on other people. And I think this whole issue of I'm right, you're wrong, we're right, they're wrong, it's so easy to do in social media. So hopefully this is a time of great awakening where things are going to change, and it's they always say that you're growing the most when you're the least comfortable, right? And so this, for me personally, this has been a very uncomfortable time of growth. So I'm very grateful for this time. There's a lot of ODs in our community who've been deeply impacted by what's going on, and I feel for them. And one, in particular, before we jump to the next question, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Saba Ayelu. I don't know if any of you know her, but she's an optometrist in DC. She's 2 blocks from the White House. She has a practice called Metropolitan Optical. She just finished remodeling it maybe 3-4 months ago, and it got trashed. And if I can, I'll put a little clip of a TV interview she did where she had no hate, right? She only had compassion, and it just to be there in her place, it was completely devastated, and to have that sort of love and compassion was really, moving to me quite a bit. So All right, I'm getting a little verklempt here. So
I would love to hear from you guys. What made you go into this field? Like, as a young child growing up, like, what was it about optometry that perked your interest?
I actually, I stumbled into the profession. So I wanted to be a dentist actually for most of my academic career because it seemed like it had a nice quality of life. You didn't have to be on call. It seemed like a really nice lifestyle. I knew a lot of dentists, and that was sort of the medical profession that I was pursuing. But the reality of dentistry is that it involves a ton of blood, which I didn't go to medical school because I don't like blood. So I always say it's a career I kind of stumbled into. I was in college. I was a sophomore in college, and I was a biology major, realizing I don't want to be a dentist anymore, and I don't want to go to medical school. What are my options? And it just kind of a light bulb went off. I'm Dr. Edwin Marshall, who's a really prominent OD. He's a former AOA OD of the Year. He was actually speaking to us at IU, like our group of I had an academic scholarship. I was in an academic scholarship program, and he just mentioned in passing that he went to optometry school. And honestly, that moment it just clicked, and I was like, optometry, duh! I wear glasses, I wear contacts. My optometrist growing up actually was a Black woman, so I talked to her, and really for me it was a stumble into sort of path, but it really made sense because optometry is a profession and is a career that allows for you to have that good quality of life. You're able to make a great living, but you're also able to talk to people and help people, which is something that I wanted to do. So for me, it was kind of something I stumbled into. I didn't grow up wanting to be an optometrist. I kind of discovered it in college, but it was a natural fit, and I really, it's such a flexible profession that I think I'm really happy with the choice that I made.
So my story is pretty similar to Danielle's. So I was elementary education. I thought I was going to be an elementary teacher since I was in elementary school. I just thought that's what I was going to do. And then I realized in my junior year of college, I was about to start into my blocks of teaching. So you go into schools and you do part-time teaching, and then you go into your full student teaching. So I was about to literally step into schools to start teaching kids. And I had a minor in astrophysics, which usually doesn't go with elementary education pretty well. So I was sitting in an optics course, and we talked about the eye a little bit, and I say it's like a frying pan moment. I'm a pretty faithful person, so like God hit me over the head with a frying pan. I'm like, hello, where have you been? This is what you need to be doing. So I actually switched my major the next day. It just felt right. I knew it was right. I called my cousin who's an optometrist and said, hey, I think I want to do this. And she goes, well, I've been waiting for a long time for you to say this. So my heart is always within pediatric optometry, just because that's where my kind of start came from, because I was able to help kids learn by being able to help them see. If a child can't be in a place where they're feeling visually ready for school, then they can't perform well in school. And I do a lot of work with learning disabilities in the visual processing system as well. So I kind of got to do everything that I love, but every day is a new different challenge. I mean, my husband's a teacher. I have great respect for educators. Most of my families are as an educator of some sort. But I just realized that the path that I needed was a little bit different. And optometry just made sense.
There you go.
You're also an educator in some sense because you're teaching people to see better. Right?
Exactly. And I mean, I really get to use a lot of the things I learned in my patient education, a lot of the things. So that was it's a little perk that sometimes I feel like I do well at, and then sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally did not describe that well. So
yeah, that's profound. You can change a life, right? For the course of their life. I know my son had vision therapy when he was 10. It was my mom who found out that, my mom was like, there's something wrong, he can't see properly. And he had gone through vision screening, right? Gone through an eye exam, and she was emphatic and fortunately connected with a fabulous pediatric optometrist and changed the course of his life. He went from totally failing school, right, to being very confident. So thank you for what you do, you guys. How about you, Kat? How'd you get into it?
I'm kind of a stumbler as well, but I stumbled on it even later. So I graduated from undergraduate at Northern Arizona University with my major in biology with minors in chemistry and psychology. So I pretty much covered all my bases if I wanted to go into something healthcare, but I didn't know what I wanted. So I basically shadowed as many professions as I could across the board. I actually made the push to PT, and then I got rejected all the schools, thank God, because I would have hated watching people work out. But when I stumbled upon optometry, I was like, this is it. This is the thing, right? So I applied to optometry school with 8 hours of shadowing experience. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make it in. My OAT score sucked. But apparently my interview was good enough to push me through, because I was one of those people who I was never excited by anything. Everything was really boring to me because I was kind of pretty okay at everything. I wasn't like perfect at everything, but I was pretty good. So when I found something that was like, this is the thing, I was like, this is going to be it. So it was kind of that moment, right? You said you get hit over the head with a frying pan. I was like, this is the thing. I got to do it. I got to pursue it. So I went for it and ended up being like one of the top people in my class, surprisingly, and everything else. So it was just a perfect thing for me. Love it. My job.
Yeah, so I went to college wanting to be a veterinarian. I loved animals, but specifically I wanted to be a racetrack veterinarian for horses.
Nice.
Very early on though, and this was around the time like Barbaro happened, I realized that was not like a very good emotional place for me to be, because dealing with death and horses getting hurt and having to be put down, like I cannot handle death very well, especially like animal death. So switching courses, and I started thinking about when I went to my optometrist back home, he was always surrounded by animals. He owned horses. He had a dog in the office. So this man came to work with his animals, went home, had animals, and I was like, well, why don't I just be an optometrist? Because he just loves hanging out with animals all day. And I realize now that is probably not how most people's offices run. But the great thing about optometry is if you wanted to have a practice where your dog hangs out front with you, you most certainly could, because we set our own workspaces, which makes this career so awesome.
I actually also stumbled upon this profession. Many years ago, I got a call from a recruiter saying they wanted someone with a background in analytics to start market analytics and research department in Essilor. And I had no idea what Essilor was, And I said, what's Essilor? And they said, it's a French company. So I thought maybe I heard it wrong. Maybe it's Estee Lauder, the cosmetic company. And the recruiter said, no, it's Essilor. They make lenses for eyeglasses. And I said, okay, I was intrigued. I did my research, interviewed, and realized that Essilor is one of the largest manufacturer of lenses in the world. And yes, 15 years ago this happened, and I'm in this profession. And as I was saying before, why I stayed on is because I feel like we are doing something better for the society. We are helping people, the world see better. So there is a social cause to what we do. And so I'm still in the industry. And what I love about this industry, as all of you do, we're constantly meeting new people, yet it feels like a family. We know each other, we care for each other, we have a great networking and relationship among all our customers, our manufacturers, and everyone. I mean, that's how I know Bill. That's how I just reached out to all of you, and each one of you so graciously agreed to be a part of this panel. I know you have busy schedules, and yet you all agreed. So that's the part I love about this industry, that we all are there to help each other out.
All right. Next question is around confidence and resiliency. So the question is, how have you built confidence and or resiliency over the course of your career?
This is something I definitely did not have growing up at all. Like I said, I'm naturally introverted, so I actually spent a lot of time forcing myself to not be that, because what I found when I was younger is that I would end up spending more and more time by myself. And then I'd end up seeing the way I would treat other people the more time I spent by myself. And I was like, that's not a good person. So I actively spent a lot of time forcing myself to go out and do things. I actually felt, so we mentioned Will really helped me become a much better human being. And he'd be like, if you have nothing else to do, we're going out right now. Right? So he would literally force me, like every conference, he'd be like, we're not staying in tonight. You're going to this party. I don't care what you think. Right. And it's really helped me. And I think it was like a weird point where I was like, I didn't know how to talk to people like at all, like having a small conversation about like, how did your day go? I didn't know how to do those things. Right. So building my confidence, all that, I spent so much time like watching people and then trying to understand how do people do that stuff. And what I ended up finding is that really, to be honest, nobody really cares exactly all the different things that you say and do and everything else. What they want to see is that you're a good person and that you're trying your best to just be out there and be true to yourself, right? You're not being like constantly judged and all these different things. That's not what's going on, right? So what I found was like the moment I started saying like my opinions and things actually matter and that I am a really knowledgeable human being, I can go out there and say like, no, this is the thing that I know. Like as a doctor, I need to have that confidence. I can't be a doctor without that confidence. I'll second guess myself every day. So I spent a lot of time building that myself to make myself a better person.
For me, confidence in terms of practicing and being in the profession, how I've built it over time, I would say is experience. So in school, I never was the, I used to say this about myself all the time. Like, I'm not a straight A student. I'm a B+ student with an amazing personality. And that was like totally my, that's my thing. Like I'd rather go out than study. Like, I just felt like it's just as important, like who you know and making those connections. And that was always the most important thing to me. So I had a lot of confidence, like in terms of my interpersonal communication skills and my networking abilities. But as a doctor and as a clinician, I think especially in academic settings, you kind of feel like if I'm not the top person in my class, then I'm incompetent. And that was something that I had to kind of work through as I got more and more patient experience and realized like how good I actually am like at the clinical piece and building like those communication skills and that networking ability translates to patients too. Like it's not just colleagues. So for me, experience kind of taught me to build that confidence and, just being quite frank, working jobs I hated, understanding like this sucks and I don't want to do this for the rest of my life and I'm going to quit. Like, I don't want to do this. And having the, like being able to say that I believe and I trust and I have faith that there is something better for me than this because this is miserable. And being able to kind of make those leaps and make those jumps has built my confidence as well to a place where, I'm out of school for 5 years and I'm licensed in 3 different states. I worked probably like 4 different jobs. It's super non-traditional, but by the time I got to LA, I could pretty much name my price and say what I wanted and say what type of place I wanted to work. I could demand, who my customers are going to be. And I was able to build the confidence that way because I knew how good I was as a doctor. And it really came from experience. It came from learning from my mistakes and my failures and from also just being honest and being true to myself, right? If I was in a situation that was not the best fit for me, leaving it and having the confidence and the trust and the faith to believe that there would be a better fit for me, and there always has been.
I feel like I'm always opposite of you, or you were really confident in your interpersonal and social skills and you needed to build confidence from like, I know what I'm seeing, I know what I'm diagnosing. I felt super confident when I first came out of school that I knew clinically what was going on. Like there was nobody who was going to outstudy me, who was going to outread. I read every publication that came across that desk, cover to cover. Like I knew everything that I could possibly know. That was my goal. But if one patient, said something or expressed like a little bit of apprehension about seeing a young female optometrist, my confidence as a person was shattered. I had very little confidence in caring for them if they expressed apprehension that I was their doctor. And I found actually what really helped with this, because I think this is something that a lot of young female docs deal with, where patients say something like, well, how long is optometry school? You can't be more than out of high school, can you? And like, they're saying to you, your patients are saying to you, I don't trust you. I don't think you know what you're doing. And you can either let that destroy you and kill you and think everybody is discriminating against me because I'm a young female, or you can kind of listen to what the patient's saying and embrace that and make it your mission to establish their confidence in you. And what I found was when I stopped taking it as a personal attack where I needed to defend myself, I know what I'm doing, and more of like, thank you so much. My wrinkle cream's working so good. I've just had the best day now. I'm going to feel great about myself the rest of the day. The patients would immediately start laughing and joking, and we just built this great relationship. And those conversations that started out that made me feel uncomfortable as a young woman seeing patients turned into my patients loving me. And at the end of the exam, sometimes they'd ask like, oh, what wrinkle cream are you using? I think I might want to try that. And it's like, oh, that's a joke, but like, I'll tell them my wrinkle cream. So sometimes you just have to, if you feel like you're getting discriminated against or something is happening against your confidence as a young female doctor, kind of like lean into a way to make your patients feel more confident, and that will in turn make you more confident.
That's so funny. That is so true of the young female doctor experience, that patients are always commenting on your age and like, are you old enough to be this? Are you the doctor? Are you sure? That's so, I love that you respond so graciously. After like 10 times, I did not respond graciously. I'm like, well, I'm obviously old enough to be the doctor because I'm wearing the white coat. How are you doing today? And usually it's like, oh, and it's like, yeah, I'm the doctor in here. But that is so true. I completely forgot about that for the majority of those first few years out of school. That really is something you come up against quite a bit.
So
go for it, Kat.
I haven't gotten much of that actually. So I always wondered about that. I was like, do I look old? Like, is one of the things I think.
Or maybe your patients are nicer. Maybe you have more nice patients. So, but I always think it's kind of the way I carry myself as soon as I walk in this room, because I own my exam room, right? Like the moment I walk in, I'm Dr. Yandell. Nice to meet you. How are you doing today, right? So I don't have any like. There's no. I feel like maybe it's just the confidence that I bring with me into my exam lane that really helps. But I always wondered if I just feel old, or if I look old.
You have an old soul, Kat. It's not that you look old. You just exude that you are wise and you are just confident. I like it.
There you go.
One thing that I had as great advice. My mom is probably one of the smartest people I know. I have a wise counsel, and she sits very high on my wise counsel. She said to us when we were younger and we were growing up that self-confidence comes from overcoming hard situations. So every time I come up and butt up against something hard and difficult, and I choose to put myself in situations that extend my comfort zone, and so that's where I gained my self-confidence. And it's still growing in what I believe and what I can do and how I perceive myself. But I think each of these stories kind of allow us to see that it was a moment where it was like, I'm unsure, but I butted up against that and I overcame that difficult situation. And so I built that confidence. I mean, my mom told me this when I was like 6, and I was like, I could never ride my bike, and then she's like, self-confidence comes from overcoming hard situations. And I was like, but I can't. And then, to when I have difficult moments in my life, financially, personally, anything. I mean, any of those moments, she goes, self-confidence comes from overcoming those hard things. So piece of advice that I received that has helped me grow as a person a lot.
So this brings me to the next question. I'm looking here at 4 very confident women who are so well established in their careers. And I look at our statistics for the US population, so roughly 51% of the population is women. Yet, even till this date, when you look at any organization, whether it's privately owned or publicly owned, the representation of women is still in single digits. Why is that? And what can we do to break that ceiling? We are still, I know so many women like you who are all, confident and ambitious and are doing well, yet we are still struggling break through the ceiling?
Yeah, this is kind of my forte. This is my passion, is allowing women to feel confident within themselves in the business setting. I believe first off, everything that happens out in the real world begins at home. So, and that home is like yourself. So really focusing on ways that you can see your value for yourself in the world. So, that's where we have to start, but I believe we've done a lot of work there as women in our world. So the next step is kind of challenging the world and their view of women. So I teach negotiation courses through the AAUW, as well as my kind of business partner and I also are working on a negotiation course that we use with women throughout optometry, as well as I just kind of help coach for negotiation for women and men, but mainly women within optometry and the outside business world. So when we discuss they're like, well, I want to do these things, I always discuss the double bind. So women have this double bind in their life, where we have these two competing ideals. They say, oh, women need to be more ambitious and women need to, find more things. Whereas when we look at that ambition, rather than seen as a positive trait, they're saying, oh, they are just greedy and they just want more and they're just trying to take things. Or, some woman comes in that's confident and knows what she wants. Oh, she's just bossy. She just wants to come over and take her, she just thinks she knows more than the rest of us. Then a woman is energetic and happy. Well, she's not that smart. She seems too kind, too generous. You have someone that's really smart and they're like, they can't be too kind. They don't have that interpersonal skills. Whereas I think you see all of us in this room, that's not the case. We are complex and nuanced individuals. So I think the beginning for us to be able to break that ceiling is to, first of all, be able to break that double bind. Being able to say a woman can be anything she wants to be. And that even means that she can be smart and she can be energetic. Within astrophysics, so my hair used to be bright blonde. And when I was in astrophysics, I was working on dark matter and quintessence in the universe. And my professor, when I dyed my hair blonde, all of a sudden started double questioning me, which I never thought would be a thing. But I all of a sudden realized, I was like, they now see me as a woman that more cares about her appearance than cares about what she is studying. And that's not the case. I can care about if I want to dye my hair or curl it or keep it straight or put it up in a messy bun or not wear makeup or wear makeup or any of that, and still have a deep care for dark energy in the universe and how it plays within our planet. I think that there's a big disconnect there. The second thing I will say that, and this is definitely a little bit more edgy than a lot of approaches that women take. But one of the biggest things that occurs in a woman's life that does not occur in a man's life is having a child. And that is a woman's choice of whether or not she wants to have a child. But once she does, her body, literally creates another human and has to take a little bit of time to recover from that. So with that, and be able to bond with the child and everything there, it's making paternity and maternity leave the same amount of time and equally offered and accepted between professions. How many times is a man like, oh, I take off a week and it's good, or a couple weeks and I kind of take off some days here or there, where a woman is more seen as she's the one that has to stay home. When we equal out that maternity and paternity leave, and as we look at the data, I've been really fortunate to be able to be a part of a lot of research groups to be able to look at the data. When we look at that and we equal those two out, the way the world views, first of all, taking maternity leave and paternity leave, as well as second of all, being able to look at the financial and the career pathway of success, it evens things out a lot more. Because rather than one gender carrying the load of that whole child rearing, childbearing time and the load of taking off time from work, it's split between the genders. Well, I will never say that a man needs to carry a child or anything of that nature, because biologically we all know that's not going to happen. But I think if we realize that the load of all of this, the way we have to approach taking that time off and being able to understand that the emotional and the physical home labor has to be equal between the two genders, is the way that we're going to make things different. And again, like I said at the beginning, way this begins in a lot of places is beginning at home. So literally a book that I have right here, I'm using it to prop up my computer. If anybody needs a good resource, it's called Fair Play. It's by Eve Rodsky. It is phenomenal. Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's literally a step-by-step book on how to build and work out kind of your home labor as well as emotional labor and all those different things. So I highly recommend it. It's just kind of funny that I have it right here set up. So, okay, done with all my rant. Go for it. I get on a soapbox with that one.
So that's actually a very, very good insight into what you feel, because I'll add a little bit of context to it from my own personal experience. So, Bill knows that I travel almost half the time per month, right? Of course, not during COVID, but most times I'm every other week I'm traveling, meeting with customers, attending conferences. And I've had people come up to me and say, "You're so lucky you have a husband who manages your kids and when you're out traveling." And I'm like, why am I lucky? It is about sharing responsibilities. When he's traveling, nobody comes and tells me that, or nobody tells him how lucky he is that, his wife is at home and taking care of the children, right? So almost like, there is a different kind of weightage given to women in terms of what they're supposed to do versus what the male counterparts should be doing. So we need to kind of have that, equality, the balancing act. So I would love to read that book you showed.
Someone who's dealing with this as a new time in my life right now, I'm really glad that you brought up, because I think now that I've had a child and I've got a 1-year-old daughter right now, I can see that my career, professionally, anything else I'm doing in the industry has slowed down quite a bit. And I think many women get to a certain point in their lives when they introduce this new part of their life. And at a certain point, there's only so many hours in a day and so many things that you can take on. And despite your best efforts and the most supportive household and the most supportive husband, like, you have to give on something. And many women do find that their career takes a little bit of a back seat as they're starting to raise a family because their family needs them. And some of the projects that I would have previously said yes to, or I want to go do on this panel, or I want to go to this conference, or I want to have that experience, that's time that, I'm leaving my child without a mother, and I have to think long and hard about saying yes to those things. And it's not just a right when you have the baby, this is a for everything, right? Like, she's constantly going to be a part of my life, and I have to be a mother to her, and I have to think about, like, who am I responsible to first? Was where before optometry was the most important thing going on in my life. As a mom, can I really say that anymore? And you have to prioritize. And so I think that we have to be aware of that. And then as a mom, I feel guilty, right? I feel guilty that I'm not as active and involved in optometry as I was. I'm not up to my standards as an optometrist and what I'm doing for the community. But at the same time, is that unfair to judge myself that way and feel bad about what I'm able to put out there, right? But I think everyone does it. And then the second thing with women and representation and leadership, so they hit this part in their career and then they take a back seat, right? Because they have to balance everything out. But then the second part is when you have leadership that's been established. I've been so fortunate to participate on many boards and many panels. And of course, when you're on those things, people want to invite their friends. So if you've got a panel of men, who are they friends with? They're other men that are in their same age bracket that they went to school with, and it becomes, a group of their friends and colleagues, because that's who they're comfortable working with. That's who they'd like to spend more time with. And then these panels or these groups of leadership don't have as much diversity. So you have to make a real commitment when you're forming panels, when you're forming boards, to say, we're not going to pick people that and like, people that you hang out with. We're going to pointedly make a decision to have a person of this age, a person of this gender, to represent different parts of our community and not just bring our friends in for this. And that goes against human nature a lot of times.
Conversations from the Zoom Room.